Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Shark Kinney, your host and Chief Shark Officer. Let me tell you about two amazing sponsors who make this show possible. Let's talk first about Inbound. From marketing and sales and commerce to CX, Invoca's active conversation intelligence platform enables revenue teams to create better buying experiences, drive more leads, and increase revenue. Trusted by top brands like Dish Network, Mayo Clinic, Mutual of Omaha, and ADT, the Invoca team is doing some amazing work in turning conversational data into automated action to enhance digital touchpoints and human interaction. Second, let's talk about Outbound. I hope that you'll take a look at Drips, the founders of conversational texting, where they use conversational AI to help you reach your customers where they're most responsive, and that's on their phones. And working with major brands like 3-Day Blinds, Liberty Mutual, Credit Repair, and Gainsco, Drips is leading the way for some of the biggest brands in the world to improve engagement rates and outcomes for their prospects and customers. Thank you to Invoca and Drips. And now, back to the show. If you had a viral video, what would you do with it? It's such a goal for so many people and so many brands. 15 years ago, it would have been a newsworthy story, but now there are new viral videos every day. But if you did have that moment, then how would it define you? What would your plan be to capitalize on it after that moment ends? Would it just be a moment for you, or would you be able to create a movement? And will it be enough to create a memory that explains your brand, personal or corporate, and answers the question, why you? Judson Laipply is a keynote speaker, MC, author, and the world's first YouTube celebrity, with his hilarious viral video of him dancing in an evolution of dance mix that explains how life is change. And on this episode, we'll discuss the first ever viral video on YouTube, having a plan after that viral moment, coming up with your own shtick to help people remember, answering the why you question, creating a movement versus a moment, getting a master's degree, quantifiably measuring your social media, what mashed and taters means to people, the stories of the Guardians, and a men's flat track roller derby team, Ellen versus Oprah, Katy Perry, video apps for dancing, and a lot more. So let's tune in to the world's first YouTube celebrity with an evolutionary dancing shark, that's me, on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Judson, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. Tell us a little bit about your background, your career to date.
Sure. So my very first paid speech was back in 1998 when I was in college. I spent a lot of time during high school working with student organizations, and I was a student council kid. So I went to conferences and summer camps, and I ran for the state board my junior/senior year of high school, and was fortunate to be elected as the state president my senior year. So I did a lot of speaking. I participated in the Rotary four-way test when I was in high school and won the local competition and went on to the state competition. But somebody gave me $50 and a gas card to come present to the college down the road from my school. And I remember thinking, I was a senior in college, and I was like, this is incredible. I can't believe somebody would really give me money to do this, because I would have gone and done it for free. And then during graduate school, I started looking into it a little bit more, and I started learning a little bit more about the business side of speaking, it's very important, because like any art or any craft or any creative endeavor, you got to have both sides of it in order to sustain a living at doing that. And during that time frame, I met a gentleman by the name of David Coleman, who had been working in the college market as a dating and relationship expert called the Dating Doctor. And he gave me a great piece of advice. He said, Judson, in order to be memorable, you got to do something that nobody else does. You have to have a bit, a shtick, an element, a piece of content, a framework, 7 habits, 5 things, something that people will remember, because they're not going to remember everything you talk about in 60 minutes or 30 minutes, even come a week, a month, 2 years later. And I came up with an idea to illustrate one of my main points, is that everything changes, not everything evolves. And kind of the world is always moving, the world is always changing. And so I came up with this idea for something called the evolution of dance, started performing it in 2001, had a lot of success with it right away, and that it became my signature piece that people would hire me and say, oh my gosh, that's right, you're the guy that does the dance. And I had kept doing it and probably had about 750 to 1,000 performances over the course of those 6 years under my belt, and then put the video up on YouTube so I could get an embedding code to put it in my MySpace profile. And then was very lucky that I had the first viral video on YouTube of all time back in 2006 with the evolution of dance. So it was the first video to hit 100 million views, and I held the top spot as most watched video for just about 3 years.
So that video, it was in 2001
So
that you posted it to YouTube?
No, so I started doing the dance in 2001. So performing the dance, the video that I used was the video footage that I used, I think, was filmed in the fall of 2005.
Gotcha.
Because at that point I probably had 50 different videos to pick from, and I just looked through all the footage and pulled the one that had kind of the best. And at the, we joke that you look back in 2006 and it was filmed on a high 8 digital tape as grainy footage. It was maybe 360, DPI.
At best, yeah.
It might have been 720 back then because it was technically HD.
Well, that's true. So that video that's on your YouTube channel is from 2006. Is that the original one that has the 300 million views?
Correct. Yeah, that's the 310 million it sits at now. Was the first one that I uploaded. So I've never changed it. I never touched it. I always was fearful of, like, if you take it down, you lose the foot, And back in 2006, 2007, even though my view count says 310, it probably has closer to 700 or 800, because there were multiple sites that, YouTube channels in that day, you could scrape somebody's video, put it up on your own. And there was one at one point that had over 70 million views on their channel that eventually YouTube went through, and anyone that wasn't granted the right to use a video, they would just take them all down.
Well, 310 million is still 309 million, 999,000 more than any of the ones that I've ever posted. So the dance, which if anybody hasn't seen it, I'll make sure to add a link on my page as well. But what were you studying in school? What did you go to graduate school for?
So I went to graduate school. My master's is in education, but my undergraduate is in recreation and leisure. And I am a big fan of active learning, leadership-based activities, emotional intelligence-based activities. So when I was in graduate school, I studied emotional intelligence, how it compares to leadership modules, kind of the traditional leadership modules, and then how to use games and activities to teach emotional intelligence and leadership concepts. So why is it that, if you want to talk to somebody about cognitive bias, why is it better to come up with an activity that can help display that, show that, instead of just saying, oh, we all have cognitive bias and you should try to do your best to not let those things interfere with your interactions. And so the dance came about. I was trying to come up with a closer. I was trying to come up with something to be my thing. And I was watching a Black comedian make fun of white people dancing at a wedding. It was at an event where there were a bunch of people showcasing. So there's this organization called NACA, which is the National Association for Campus Activities. And in the early 2000s, it was very active in that the schools would come to a regional event. They would watch 40 to 60 acts over the course of 3 days, do 15 to 20 minutes. Hypnotists, comedians, bands, speakers, magicians, all sorts of different acts. And if they liked your performance, they would talk to you about hiring you to come to their campus. And it was a great way to get work in the college market. And it worked very, very well from my point in my career. And I was attending one of the events, watching this comedian on stage, and it was in Wisconsin. And he had been invited to a wedding of a friend. He said, I go to this wedding, I look around and I realize I'm the only non-white person. Like, it's just all white people and me. And he goes, and I noticed a phenomenon that about every third or fourth song during the reception, the music would start playing and everyone in unison would get up, run to the dance floor, do the same dance. Then when the song was over, they would kind of just drop their arms, look at each other, and then go sit back down. And he goes, and this happened all night. And he was doing some demonstrations and it was real funny. And I turned to my friend and I was like, that is so true. There are so many songs that have very specific dances that when that song comes on, everybody does that dance. And then I was like, that'd be funny to see some of those in a medley. And then I was like, that'd be funny to see some of those in order. And I ran upstairs to my room at the hotel and I wrote down on a scrap piece of paper, the evolution of dance. And I wrote down the first 12 songs that came to mind. And I went out the next day and I bought a mixing program online called Audacity, which still to this day is like one of the most popular sound mixing programs available. Learned how to mix music, mixed a 2.5 minute track of 12 songs, and then went out and performed it. Pretty poorly the first time. I wish I had video footage of that first one, but I recorded over it eventually, unfortunately, because it was not. That was
the Betamax version.
Correct. It was definitely a practice round, but I needed to see how it worked. And even just the music and the half-assed dancing at that point in time was enough that people were cheering and going crazy for it. And after I got done, a woman that I was working with at the time, this woman named Anne, who was a kind of a manager slash agent, came back and she was just like, oh yeah, like this is going to be your thing for a while.
Well, you go to graduate school to get a degree in education, likely I'm assuming to be in the pursuit of being a teacher or doing something in the educational field.
No, I basically got my master's because David Coleman, the guy that I had met, said, listen, I would recommend for you to go get your master's degree because it gives you an extra layer of credibility and they can never take that away from you.
So you knew that was going to be a backup plan, if at most, or if anyway, a credibility factor. You had always intended to be a speaker?
Yeah, I had wanted to be a speaker basically probably in the middle of undergrad, like my sophomore, junior year. I thought I would have to go work another job for a while and then go on to be a speaker. But when the opportunity to go to grad school came up, and I had been talking with David, and he was like, listen, I would say go to grad school and keep speaking whenever you can. And I did any event and everything, every presentation that was in a class I volunteered to do, every conference I attended as a student or as a delegate, I would submit to present. And so I was always presenting. But when people talk about the speaking world or even the marketing world, whenever you just talk about anything, the question always is, why you? Why pick you? Why should I buy from you? Why should I use your product? Why should I use your service? Why should I hire you to speak? And at that time, I didn't have the first YouTube viral video. And so everything you can do to add to that possibility, and having a master's degree, whether it's true or not, automatically gives you an extra level of credibility. Just like if you go get your doctorate, automatically gives you an extra layer of credibility.
So at what point did you know that you struck gold? I mean, because there's one thing to have a viral video, but then the other is that this is where I'm going with my career now.
So there's definitely levels to striking gold. When I started speaking, I wrote a 5-year plan, a 3 to 5 year plan. I interviewed several people in the industry, and a lot of them said, listen, you have to give yourself at least 3 years. Starting a speaking career, just like any entrepreneurial, it doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to flip a switch and then you're going to be like, yeah, look at me, I'm a success. As much as we like to talk about life hacking and finding the shortcuts, true success, true sustainable success needs a foundation to be built upon. And that needs to take probably at least 3 to 5 years. So I wrote out a 5-year plan that had, 15 gigs the first year, 30 gigs the second year, 50 gigs the third, and on and on and on. And I was right on track. And I wrote that in 2001 timeframe. And so when the video came out, I had basically just finished my 5-year plan. And I was like, okay, I was going to write another one, but let's just kind of see where this video thing goes, thinking that at most it would be it would be like a year. And this is all 2006, which it's hard to think back what your mindset was like because viral videos didn't exist. Twitter wasn't around, Instagram wasn't around, Facebook, you had to have an educational email address in order to get access to Facebook. It wasn't even available for people who didn't have a .edu email address. And so, so social media was still based around GeoCities and MySpace. And that didn't lend itself real well to becoming an influencer or establishing an online brand. A YouTuber didn't even exist then. It was still just people posting one-off videos here and there with maybe some people getting into the idea. So as far as striking gold, I don't know if that ever, it probably took a couple of years for me to at least say, okay, this is going to be more sustaining than just this quick sprint. like anything, you have a viral video, you're going to have a few years of, you're going to have a time frame of attention. Now in 2006, viral video attention was a year-long thing because there wasn't much competition. Now the attention you get from a viral video is, if you're lucky, a week.
At best. Yeah.
Yeah, at best.
Talk a little bit about the statistics you bring up earlier in your presentation about how few videos actually go viral, because that's something that everybody's chasing to create.
Well, and the hard part is more videos go viral today than did 10 years ago. However, there are probably 100,000 more videos every day today than there were 10 years ago. So percentage wise, it keeps dropping. The amount of content, and nobody knows exactly because everyone guesstimates these numbers, but it's estimated that there are over 11 trillion videos on YouTube alone, just YouTube, not counting TikTok and Facebook and Instagram videos and Snap. So if you think about that for a second, 11 trillion, if you, on a daily basis, it's something like 80,000 hours of content is uploaded every hour onto YouTube, which means it would take you like 80 years to watch one day's worth of content. So trying to go viral is unfortunately something that's really, really difficult from a pure strategy standpoint. And that was one of my points in an essay at that talk about reality, is it's not a strategy. Never in your strategic plan should you say, okay, when we go viral, then we will, unless you somehow have access to 50 A-list celebrities who are all going to play a spelling game together.
Pay-for-play game.
Yeah, or something along those lines where you'll get a bump, but you might not get real true virality. And that's the other part of it too. You can buy views, you can buy numbers, you can buy metrics, but that true virality is something that's really hard to predict, and it's not going to be a strategy.
Well, one of my favorite moments in your speech that I've seen where you talk about this is really looking at things as a moment versus a movement. And it's also, you talked about the Ice Bucket Challenge and the $200 million that have been raised for ALS research since then. I mean, it created a movement. And I think for brands specifically, or marketers, or even influencers are really wanting to enact change, that you remember is, I don't remember 99.9% of the videos that did go viral because they didn't create any movement whatsoever. And it seems that so many people are chasing a moment that they forget to really create a movement. So elaborate, if you will, a little bit on what you meant by that story.
Absolutely. And this is where you start getting into the metaphysical and the philosophical idea around why people do what they do. The difference between a moment and a movement from a purely viral standpoint is a level of participation. My video is a moment in time. It's a video footage of me doing an elemental piece that people enjoy and brings joy to them. Tay Day singing Chocolate Rain is a moment. It's a video of him singing a song, moving away from the microphone, him being himself, things like that. The Ice Bucket Challenge, the Harlem Shake, the Mannequin Challenge, planking back in the day, the various challenges that happen on TikTok on a daily basis, those are all participatory things. Most of them don't have any sort of social aspect behind it, any sort of change that they want to have take place, but some do. And we've seen some also just from a societal standpoint with the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement. We call them movements because they're bringing awareness to a concept, to an idea, to a conversation, and they have the ability to bring around actual change on the planet. The Ice Bucket Challenge wasn't, the original Ice Bucket Challenge was just a fun challenge people did. The two gentlemen that I talked about, Peter and Pat, Peter Francis, Pat Quinn, they were the two individuals who kind of brought ALS into it and connected those two things together, and that, for whatever reason, helped that take off. And you can look back then at the year following that, how many different organizations then tried to get their own thing up and running after that. But like most things in the world of virality, you got to be first. First is oftentimes way more important than anything else when it comes to virality, because People are trying to capture lightning in a bottle twice. And so when you are an agency, when you are a brand and you're trying to earn some of that attention as opposed to buying that attention, if you're doing it for purely selfish reasons, you might get a little bit of traction, but it's probably not going to go that big. If there's a true desire to bring awareness to a conversation, and this is how you know kind of when something really becomes a movement, it's not about that person anymore. It's, you know, very few people know the name Pat Quinn and Pete Francis because it was never Pat and Pete's Ice Bucket Challenge. It was the Ice Bucket Challenge to help raise money for ALS. So when somebody wants some of that, you know, it's you just pick a random brand, you know, the Oreo dunking challenge, which I think they've privately tried to do multiple times, of how do you dunk your Oreo, and make a video to show us how you dunk it. And that's fun and that's fine. That's not going to change anything in the world, especially when it's got Oreo dunking challenge in front of it.
Yeah, right. The logo's all over it.
Yeah, it's fine to want to have that. It's fine to want to be about yourself. Like we all have to market. We all have to work on our brand. We all have to try to get attention in this world of constant we just have so much going on in the world, and try to break through that. We want people to remember who it is and why we're doing what we're doing. But if you really are trying to create a change in the world and you want to figure out a way to have some virality around it, you have to detach yourself from whatever it is that you're going to send out.
Yeah, another thing that you talked about that I just thoroughly enjoyed was, you know, really how most people are chasing likes and shares and promoting that. I know the consumability and shareability conversation comes up. It was a pretty good joke too about how I see major name marketers all the time say that people are asking me for this research or that research, and we know they're not. Nobody's asking for it, and it never seems sincere. But you talked about, really, I think from a business standpoint, that matters to most of us that might be financing some of this is what actually works and performs, rather than just the typical vanity metrics. And I wish you'd kind of tell a little bit about the Virginia Tech Challenge Box example versus the other, and what's viral, and then what's actually viral that performs.
Yeah, so I have a good friend who is pretty cool because he and I have been friends for a long time, and he has a business that is really niche, and that he works in outdoor 3D advertising, interactive pieces, and he has done some incredible stuff in his career. But it just happens that he has two incredible examples that I have gotten permission to use. One was he was involved with the Fearless Girl Project, which is a statue that was placed in front of the Wall Street Bull. It was supposed to be there for 2 weeks and ended up being there for almost 2 years. And then they moved it to a permanent location. So that was the first example. Almost everyone on the globe has heard or seen the statue of the Fearless Girl. They know what it is. And then the other one was this giant mirror box that I showed a picture of both of them and said, who's seen this one and the Fearless Girl? And everybody raises their hand. And who's seen this one? And nobody raises their hand. And that particular box was a project that he had done for a company. And it was put on Virginia Tech's campus originally the first time. And it was designed to give engineer students a equational challenge. It was called the Challenge Box. And if they were able to figure out what the equation was, and I don't even understand how the equation works. It was written by some professors, like it was a difficult equation. If they solved the equation in a set time frame, I think they might have had an hour once they started their challenge. The box opened up, they walked inside, and it was all screens inside, and it became an infinity room with some really cool video that played, and then a live person popped up and said, congratulations on the challenge box. We would like to invite you to an interview for the Lockheed Martin engineering space program. And it was created solely for Lockheed Martin to entice engineer students to come apply for their space program. And within less than a day, I think it was supposed to be there for a week, within less than a day, every engineering student at Virginia Tech had heard about it, wanted to be in it. It created this buzz and excitement. And then literally their goal, I don't remember what the specific numbers were, but their goal was to end up with a few applicants and hopefully a 1 or 2 hires, because in the engineering space, especially for a space program, the competition is fierce. And it was such a success that they have put the box on like 7 other campuses. They go back every single year. And it's not that the Fearless Girl wasn't successful and wasn't a huge viral success, because you could argue that that might be the single most viral thing that's ever happened on the planet, because it was everywhere. I mean, there are people in pretty much every country who have some access to the internet or television who have seen that statue. But it was about being able to specifically measure for a task, because the company that commissioned the Fearless Girl statue was a hedge fund company who was opening a new fund designed around women-based businesses. I'm guessing that the average person did not give $10 million to this fund. So they didn't, they gain a lot. They gain a great story, and they might have gained a little bit, but most people don't know the name of a company that actually put out Fearless Girl.
If only they had put their logo all over
right on the face of it.
Just what they probably wanted.
So the concept being around we have 2 examples of 2 great things. One that was a small scale viral success and one that was a large scale viral success. But I made the argument that the small scale one is actually more successful because they were able to quantifiably measure what it was they wanted to do. And so I was trying to convince people to recognize that when you have a brand, when you are marketing, when you are doing any sort of project, you're better off to narrow in on a specific area to try to increase the chances of going viral. And then we talked about being able to find commonalities that, one of the things every viral video or every viral entity has an emotional connection. And the fastest way to connect emotionally is familiarity. So you have to figure out a way, and every industry, every silo, every hobby, everything that everybody does has a language and acronyms. And like I like bourbon. So in the bourbon world, there are tons of phrases that are only familiar to people in the bourbon world. Mash and tater are 2 great examples. So ask somebody outside the bourbon world, mash and tater, and they're probably going to think mashed potatoes. But inside the bourbon world, taters are people who wait in line to get good bourbon on days that the truck gets delivered. And the mash is the makeup that gets fermented that eventually becomes the bourbon.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I also loved from that discussion, though, was it wasn't that it was just measurable, because you would get people who would also say not everything has to be measured. There was nothing you could measure with it that was sustainable or long-term or impactful. It was a great moment that everybody remembers. So I guess that all goes back to measurement.
Well, and like you said, you don't have to measure everything. And I don't believe you do either, especially when you have something that goes viral, because you're going to have, if you get something that has real virality and ends up, it's going to be in front of a lot of people that it doesn't matter. But when you talk about just marketing and branding and strategy, it's still a business. You still have to be able to, there are a lot of some of the early day viral entities that were unable to leverage their viral experience to create a business or create make enough money off that one viral thing that led, everyone has this dream that if I can just have one viral video, everything else will be fine. Like everything else will be taken care of. And you can count on your hand the number of people who have had that experience. It's kind of liken it to a professional athlete. That'd be like a professional athlete saying, if I can just make one shot, then everything's taken care of. Like, no, you got to make a lot of baskets. You got to score a lot of goals. You got to practice a lot of hours, and you still have to keep at it. Like there's never a moment where you go, okay, if I can just have one viral thing, then I'll have enough money in the bank. I'll never have to work again.
Yeah. Well, you have a phenomenal keynote, but and I know you have a big following on YouTube and respectful following on the other channels, but you don't have a gazillion followers on, say, Instagram.
Oh, no.
How do you look at navigating all the other channels?
So I was 30 when my video went viral. I'm 45 now. I didn't grow up in the 24/7 social media world. So I don't have the same desire to be on, if you could make one argument against when the best time to go viral would be, going viral in 2010 to 2015 was probably the most ideal time frame, because Twitter, Instagram, all those things were around, and you could go from a couple thousand subscribers or followers to maybe a million. Because we all talk about now is, well, if you can get 1 million followers on TikTok or Instagram, you immediately become an influencer. And now you've got, the doors are open to brand deals and brand postings. And yeah, that's phenomenal. And that's great. But we've yet to play this out on the long scale. And I think we're going to start to see in the future, a lot of people who don't have a good solid foundation as a human being, because their existence and their validity was built upon external validation, all those likes and all those things. And we saw it with some of the early YouTubers who eventually kind of got to this point, because your audience needs you all the time. You can't go on vacation. If you go away for a few days and you don't post, then people start freaking out and they start wanting more and collaborating. That's it. So for me, I've always just done whatever felt comfortable to me, what felt right. I don't post regularly on YouTube. I might go 5-6 years without posting anything on YouTube. And I still have 100,000 subscribers just sitting there, who I'm sure if every time I ever post a video for the random reasons, they're always just like, I thought you weren't alive. Wow, it's great.
Well, a little more on the fairly recent era. TikTok has entertained me especially through the pandemic. And I see often when I watch ridiculous videos, someone will do something in a video or a series. And then, I saw some guy cut people's hair on the street. Somebody came up to him and said, oh yeah, I've seen you do those videos on TikTok before. And they'll ask whoever the person is, or tell them, I've seen you on TikTok, love what you're doing, high fives and all. But those may get 10,000 to 1 million views. Yours has been seen 300 million times. I'm just curious. And maybe it was 10 years ago, but do you ever get recognized much out in the world? Or are you just hanging out at the grocery store like the rest of us?
Yep. I was very fortunate too, because if you could write a script for having a video go viral and pick something about it that would be beneficial in the long run, is you can't tell that it's me in the video.
Yeah.
Because the footage is grainy. I may or may not have had yellow highlights at the time in my hair. Which makes it look a little weird. I was wearing a t-shirt tucked into my jeans.
Yeah.
So
clean shaven. You look more like Joe Polizzi now. You both live in Cleveland. So
I think maybe in my life, 5 to 10 times completely and totally randomly have I been recognized. I have been recognized when I'm at an event, if I'm going to be the speaker. Some people might be on the lookout for you or things like that, but just flat out walk up like, hey, wait a minute, are you the such and such? Just a few times, fortunately, because you're right. I think there are other people who have to deal with, and there's some people who like that, but there's also a lot of people who would say over time it would probably get, especially if they were never able to benefit from it financially, which a lot of viral videos didn't benefit financially speaking.
You close out your show. Your original video was 6 minutes, but you do normally a 3.5 minute video.
No, so the full dance routine is 8 minutes now. So what you saw, I only had 40 minutes total with what the keynote that you saw. I only had a total of 40 minutes, and we wanted to do some of the interactive part and getting people to do some thinking part. So I didn't want to take 8 minutes out of 40 to do the full dance. So I have a version that I do for the virtual shows, because in the same breath, watching the joke when I do a virtual show is, for all the people in the audience, I'm like, now when somebody asks you what you did today, you get to be like, I watched a 45-year-old man dance in his basement on the internet. So
well, I get where it plays well in a lot of venues with a lot of audiences, but has an 8-minute funny dance video ever not played well with an audience?
I gotta admit, I cannot remember a time that the dance didn't play well. I can remember times
even lawyers and accountants dance.
Yep. And I remember times when I didn't do well for the first 40 minutes of my event, where just for whatever reason, we all have off days. But then when I finish with the dance, they'll be like, oh yeah. Okay. Good thing you got that dance, man. Good thing you got that dance.
Well, as you get older, hopefully there won't, be any hips thrown out or anything, because you might be like a 75-year-old holding a walker.
Well, the running joke is the dance is going to go from funny to sad, and then eventually maybe back to funny again.
Yeah. Well, Judson, I ask everybody that's been on Shark's Perspective, what is their favorite kind of shark and why? Do you have any good, fun shark stories?
My
It's an
favorite, I think
easy one for you too. I'm giving you a setup question that you should know.
I think my favorite kind of shark would probably have to be a hammerhead shark,
Okay.
just because of the fun. But the other one is, when I was a kid, I don't know where I saw this before or what it was, but there was some cartoon or something where one of the young children, because I did this for like 2 or 3 years when I was like 6 or 7, you put your elbows, you wrap yourself together, you put your elbows in front of your mouth, and then you just go rah, 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 and open up your elbows, and you were a shark. I think it might have been like Linus from the
Yeah,
Peanuts. And so
that probably was. I was thinking you were going to say the dancing sharks who were with Katy Perry at the Super Bowl.
that's, but they were terrible dancers.
They were
So
horrible dancers. All right. Well, Judson, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting, important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I am ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that I will be asked this week.
There you go. So, all right. Number 1, you've been on both of their shows, Oprah or Ellen?
I would say they're even. So of all, I think I have the distinct pleasure of being the only person who's ever been on both Oprah and the Tosh.0 show. I'm pretty sure that no one on the Daniel Tosh was ever on Oprah as well. Ellen and Oprah are they're both incredible human beings. They've both done a world of good. And I know sometimes they both get bad raps because people say, oh, they were mean or they weren't very nice. But I don't think anyone can ever fully understand what it's like where every single person knows you, and you don't ever get to interact with somebody authentically again, because you always have to worry about, is this person being nice to me for me, or do they want something for me, or do they think that I can't tell. My favorite Oprah story was they had a surprise guest on the show when I was on. Patrick Swayze came out. There was a couple who had reenacted the dance from Dirty Dancing, and they had some viral fame, and we're all sitting there, and all of a sudden she's like, we have a surprise guest, and Patrick Swayze walks out to say that, and it was great. And during the commercial, the founders of YouTube, who came on the show, who never did interviews, but they came on because it was Oprah, said to Oprah, hey, did you know Patrick Swayze was going to be here? And she just looks at him and goes, yeah, it's my show.
Right. And one of the greatest Saturday Night Live skits ever. Patrick Swayze, Chris Farley dancing as a Chippendale dancer.
That was best.
Number 2, the Cleveland Guardians baseball team, the new name, or the Cleveland Guardians roller derby team, which is the Cleveland. I just found this out. The Cleveland Men's Roller Derby is a flat track roller derby league supporting the Cleveland Guardians all-star travel team. So I didn't even know that there was a men's roller derby team in Cleveland named the Guardians until they made the name change from the Indians to the Guardians in baseball.
Yeah, so I was not unhappy with the Guardians name. I do like the Guardians name. And anyone out there listening that doesn't know the story, the Guardians are 4 statues that were created across 2 bridges around transportation in, I think, in the 1920s. And so do a little research, find out why they're called the Guardians. A lot of people in Cleveland also wanted the Spiders, which was our original baseball team from before MLB existed. But it turns out, one of the articles here in Cleveland said, they looked into it, but it was going to be a little bit more of a fight with the University of Richmond, a college, is also the Spiders. And we live in a world nowadays with trademarks and rights and all these things. And I think they figured, let's pick the Guardians because it gives us a clean slate, because the only other Guardians are a roller derby team. And then I think there's an arena football team somewhere too that's also called the Guardians. So.
Yeah, well, I'm looking for, maybe this will help them get over their slump too. So, all right, number 3, you obviously have a huge following on YouTube with 100,000 plus subscribers, but let's talk about other video platforms that might be your favorite: TikTok or Instagram Reels.
I don't do anything on TikTok, only because I know what TikTok is, and I don't want to be. TikTok's a time machine. You open up TikTok and immediately it's at least 45 minutes to an hour later. and
it's like Clubhouse. I get on either one of them and I feel like I've got to shave because I've been locked in for 24 hours.
Yeah. And so I know the TikTok videos are great. And I see a lot of the TikTok videos that get reposted on other things. And I have watched TikTok stuff. I've watched with my niece and things. And I think
best
TikTok,
platform for dance videos then right now?
I mean,
if you had to
it's
pick?
definitely got to be TikTok by far. I
Agreed,
mean,
agreed.
TikTok dominates. If I was starting all over again, I would go to TikTok first.
Yeah, agreed. All right, number 4, favorite dance move, the robot or the worm?
Well, it was the worm, but since I'm 45 now, the worm has since been out of the dance for probably 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. All right, number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Ooh, what kind of biscuits though?
You pick, use your imagination.
I mean, if it's full on Southern biscuits
yeah.
with some honey and butter, then I would have to say biscuits.
Southern flaky biscuits. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the way to go. All right. So, Judson, where can people find out more about you? Follow your thoughts on virality, change, which is a great keynote conversation. Watch your dance videos and more.
Well, you can always find me at my website, which is Judson Laipply, JudsonLaipply.com. That's the same handle. Judson Laipply is the same handle for Instagram, all those things. And I also have a community number. You can text me at 419-273-6455. And that joins, like, you can text me directly. You become part of the community. And then I have the opportunity to communicate with people via text message that way. So I send out text messages every once in a while. I am not anywhere close to the amount of content you're supposed to be sending out. So I sent out a text message yesterday, and then I looked back at the last one, and it had been like 4 months since I had sent anything else out. So it's always random. It's always thoughts, ideas. A lot of times it's book recommendations because I'm a pretty avid reader and I continue to read a lot of books. And whenever I read a book that I really think could benefit a lot of people, I'll try to advertise that book without any sort of affiliation whatsoever. So the one that I really like a lot now, if people are listening, is called The Psychology of Money. Fantastic book on just looking at money and how we relate to money, and some really good practical advice for people.
Judson, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Oh, my pleasure, Shark. I appreciate it.
So there was my conversation with Judson Laipply, a keynote speaker, MC, author, and the world's first YouTube celebrity, with his hilarious viral video of him dancing in an evolution of dance mix that explains how life has changed. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, so what do you do, or what do you have that people remember? What's your signature bit, if you will? But whether you're a speaker, a basket weaver, or a widget maker, hopefully you've identified not just what your logo is or your messaging says, but hopefully you'll figure out what it is that they will remember about you. Second, he asked a question that we should all at least try to answer, as difficult as it is, whether you're a speaker, consultant, a brand, or even a potential hire. He asked, why you? Why pick you? Why should I buy from you? Why should I buy your product? Why should I buy your service? Why should I hire you to speak? With whatever credibility you have. Love what he said. So the question is, what's your why you? Third, love this point. Viral is not a strategy. So many people chase a moment that they forget to create a movement. And most don't have a 3 to 5 year plan after they've struck gold. He brought up the Ice Bucket Challenge in another notable art exhibit in New York. One drove $200 million in ALS research, and the other, while an interesting work of art, did not perform the same way for a hedge fund. And people are still not measuring correctly what performs. And remember, going viral isn't what it used to be when you consider how fleeting it is. So just keep that in mind as well. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. I'm so thankful to everyone who listens, and thank you to the amazing sponsors, Invoca and Dreps. Would you please consider writing a review and letting me know your thoughts on the show? I love to read them, and it sure does help me create better content for you and me. It's time for this shark to dance again, but I may have to do it underwater where no one hopefully would see me. Please join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.